Welcome to Punchline Talks, the business breakfast briefers. I'm Mark Owen, and each week I invite a panel of business experts to talk about the national newspapers, find out what's happening in their own individual business and their own individual business sectors, and finally, what's caught their eye in Punchline. We've got a fantastic panel of guests, and I'd like to introduce them. We've got Councillor Mike Collins, Cabinet Member for Cyber Regeneration Commercial Income for Cheltenham Borough Council. He's a Liberal Democrat from Ben Hall and Readings, and he's leading the £1 billion Golden Valley development. We have Martin Holmes, who's the People Director for Creed Food Services. Last year, they celebrated 50 years in business. They employ 400 people over 3 sites with a turnover £100 million. And finally, never last but least, we've got Julie Kent. She's the founder of Emily's Gift Support Children's Cancer in Gloucestershire, and she's also the Vice Chairman of Pied Piper. And she pops up everywhere, and here she is this morning. So lovely to see you as well. I'd like to thank our fantastic sponsors, Hayswood's Accountants and Business Advisors, and let's have a look at the national newspapers, see what's making the headlines. It's a really mixed bag, but we start off with that terrible story about Olivia, who was gunned down by Thomas Cashman, has now been found guilty for her murder. And the front pages of the papers carry on with this theme. The Daily Express: yes, justice done for Olivia. The Daily Telegraph: if you are buying drugs, you're responsible for Olivia's death, says the Telegraph. The Mirror: justice for Olivia. The Daily Mail: monster whose only tears were for himself, not little Olivia, the innocent he murdered. The Sun: lover shot Olivia, killer. Very brave thing to do, and thank goodness she's did it as well. And The Guardian: Trump indicted over 2016, but the story that's really catching the eye there, I think, is Putin's global cyber warfare. I'm sure Mike will have a thing or two to say about that as well. Pensions blow, says the Eye, for people in their 40s, work until the age of 70. The Times: retire early if you did not go to university. The Financial Times: China warns Europe not to follow US call for trade curbs. And the Daily Star: we love the Daily Star. Put a little bit of spice in your life, as they say, and a bit of thing. So, psycho killer chatbots are befuddled by Wordle. Right, let's go straight to the panel. It's a bit of a mixed bag today, but let's start with you today, Mike. What have you chosen from the papers?
Well, you've already started it, Mark, there, but I've gone for the Daily Mail. I can't remember the last time I bought a copy of the Daily Mail, but anyway, there it is. And it's what's caught my eye, these photographs at the bottom. So the cowardly gunman who murdered 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Corbell in her own home. Now, I mean, just let that sink in. I didn't want to mention his name, but I suppose I should really. Thomas Cashman, he's been found guilty of her murder. What's really annoyed me is he's shown absolutely no remorse whatsoever. He's a father of 2 himself, and it was crocodile tears, I think, after the sentencing. After the verdict. He's going to be sentenced on Monday, and I hope that he gets a very long sentence.
What else have you got, Mike? You're right. It's a terrible story, that.
I've got the other one I picked out was The Guardian there, the bottom of the front page of The Guardian, but it goes further into the paper, pages 14 and 16. And I thought this was quite apt for me because the article on the cybersecurity is very closely linked to what we're doing with the Golden Valley development, obviously, with the cybersecurity side of things there. And I just thought, well, not only has Putin started a ground war that's killed tens of thousands of people and displaced millions. I'm actually a member of the Home to Ukraine scheme. I've got Ukrainian guests in my house at the moment. So, you know, I've had to listen to some of the things that they've had to go through, which is quite harrowing, to be quite honest with you. I don't think we can appreciate living in our nice, safe, warm homes. But Putin's now started a campaign of cyber warfare too. And he's got a whole department running this. And the article details his tactics on what is called, he's called waging a global and domestic cyber warfare. And who knows what's going on there? But I mean, if you go further into the paper, there were three bullet points that the journalist has come up with, and they cover things such as the private Moscow consultancy bolstering army and spy agencies, the tools support hacking operations and attacks on infrastructure, and the program basically aims to spread disinformation and control what's on the internet. So from our Western point of view, this is scary stuff, and it actually means that having the Golden Valley Development, part of our national cyber security organisation here in Cheltenham, is going to help prevent those things from affecting us in a negative way going forward.
No, we're perfectly spot on there, actually. Depends how long it takes to build it, isn't it? But goodness, what's going to happen there. And take my hat off to you there, but for having a family of Ukrainians with you as well. You know, lots of people talked about it, and you know, I can't imagine what that's like. It must be a huge. Well, what has it been like, Mike? Before I move on quickly.
It's not been too bad. I actually was offered a family to start with, but then I've actually taken a single person, and I'm in the fortunate position where I've got spare rooms, I've got a spare bathroom, so they've got their own little space really. They've come here and they've started work. They're working very hard. They work nights, 3 or 4 nights a week, 12-hour shifts at a local care home. So you know, they're not scrounging. They're paying their way, and the only limitation I've put on them is that my chair is in front of the television, and when the rugby's on, that's where I sit. Okay, so they can use the television the rest of the time, but if there's a rugby match on, that's my thing.
That's fair enough, Mike. Okay, let's go over to you, Julie. What have you picked from the national papers, please?
Well, probably as the only retired person, can't even move it in the right direction. Yeah, from the time. So this caught my eye about retirement, and especially because they're saying, as you said, you know, some of the young people, it could be 70 for them till they collect their pension. Certainly for me, at 67, my husband is already retired. He was very excited when he collected his pension. It just went into his account. He was so excited, almost as excited as when he got his bus pass as well, which was handy. And I just, you know, it's all very quiet compared with France, where theirs went up to 64 and they've had protests all over the place. Will we just lie down and take it? I don't know. I mean, as I say, I'm the only person on this panel that is retired, I think.
Well, I think it all depends, doesn't it, about the communication. People are living, and the country has to pay for it. It's quite simple as that. And you can't have, in France, if you retire at 62, you can't imagine it, can you? If those people live for another 30 years, which they might do, talk about, I know they might put into the state, but my goodness, they'll be taken out of the state.
I think it said somewhere that they don't think anyone should be retired more than 32% of their lifetime. But also, how are they going to, they're talking about if you didn't go to university and you do a manual job, then you can retire earlier. However, are they going to monitor that? That's just ridiculous and just unfair, really. So, yeah, normal craziness, I thought, really.
Okay, what else you got?
My second one, I ripped it out to make it easier, and it's about the BBC. They've got to get rid of 1,000 hours of shows, and so we're going to get more and more repeats. Now, actually, I don't watch the television. I don't have time to watch the television. The only time I watch is on a Saturday night when I'm writing the Pied Piper post on the MailChimp. My children, who are 27 and 22, they don't watch the BBC. So I just wonder how many people will this affect, really? It is generally the older people that watch the BBC. I do watch the news. Getting ready in the morning, I watch BBC News. But certainly for my children, they watch Netflix, they watch Sky documentary, they watch everything else. So, you know, they probably don't have a license. They probably watch it through their PlayStations or whatever it is that you can do now. I don't know. I'm just guessing. But, you know, are we bothered?
Well, this is it. And the more repeats they have, the less we're going to watch it. It's quite simple as that, really. They're shooting themselves in the foot. Don't get me started on local radio. Thanks ever so much, Julie. We'll go over to Martin now. Martin, thanks ever so much for joining Punchline Talks today. What have you picked out for us?
Well, interestingly, I was on this pension thing as well with Julie. I just think it's, you know, I won't go into it now because it's been covered, but I think, you know, it's part of that bigger challenge of an aging population. We had supposedly 600,000 people retired early as a consequence of the pandemic, and there's a pressure to try and encourage those people back into the workforce when they've made that decision of this different lifestyle. We'll have people living for longer. It's all part of that bigger picture and huge challenge we're going to face in the future with healthcare and all of it, and how are we going to do it? And you know, Julie made a really good point about, you know, manual workers can retire early, but there's also a piece about graduates later, a whole mixture of different ways. But interestingly, a much smaller article in the Guardian as well. But basically, the summary was around it's all on hold until the election because nobody wants to jump one way or the other, really, to go the wrong way with this. But it's a huge challenge, I think, moving forward, how we're going to support people and what's going to happen. And how physically able people are to work or not, and what different jobs they'll do as they get older. I think it is a huge challenge coming for all.
But let's be honest. I mean, when you're 70, do you really want to? Can you still do a manual job like that? Just physically, you might mentally be able to, but physically you might not. It's a bit like the armed forces. You retire at 55 because you can't carry a pack on your back and a rifle, and at the end of the day, you need to be physically and mentally fit.
My dad did a physical job until he was 76 or 77, I think. But I mean that's a real exception. Yeah, absolute exception.
And will he be still? Martin, what else you got?
Well, the other thing that caught my eye, I mean, a very serious subject, huge topic, I think. Hard to find something that's lightweight in these times, but call for hash browns to be banished from the full English. Here we have in the Times. Traditionalists find the parvenu potato cake hard to stomach and are fighting back. Somebody had to put their foot down. It was said by the founder of the English Breakfast Society. The huge piece around McDonald's having the hash browns, and a lot about hashtag bring back the bubble. The classic thing should be homemade, prepared from scratch, bubble and squeak. So, I do have some sympathy with that. There's a whole gauge here of what's the most important thing. Bacon at 89%. There's like your big five of bacon, sausage, fried egg, mushrooms and toast. It's even commented somewhere in the piece about, something along the lines of we let baked beans in, and that was kind of enough letting those in. So I thought it was quite a humorous thing. But also, something about that. What does breakfast look like? I went out to get the paper this morning early, which I don't normally do, but everybody was coming in, buying their coffee, buying some breakfast. I think, buying a version of a cooked breakfast, really, bacon rolls, sausage rolls, all of that piece. And just interested now that's sort of changed, but not changed. But the cooking from scratch thing, for me, hash brown, bubble and squeak, cooked from scratch is a lovely thing. So really interesting. But again, I wonder how many people are actually really taking the full English breakfast seriously.
Oh, I love the full English.
The other piece.
I totally agree with you. Hash browns shouldn't be part of it. As for bubble and squeak, stick a fried egg on the top of it.
It's got to have the fried egg on top, slightly leaking into it, hasn't it? That's the only way to go with it. Absolutely. And a little bit of black pepper. And
it's funny, actually, only recently over the last 2 years, I've really got into black pudding as well. Good quality black pudding from that is just wonderful. And let's just very quickly talk about Find the Newspaper, because I do this show every week, and the amount of the panelists that don't buy newspapers anymore, I gather you guys are the same. Let's start with you, Julie. Do you buy a paper every day?
No, but I do subscribe to about 4 magazines a month. So I do enjoy getting my women's magazines through the door.
Fair play. And Mike, what about yourself? New experience?
No, I can't remember the last time I bought a morning newspaper. The only times I generally do is if I'm traveling and I'm going for an airport. So I might buy one on the way through sort of departure lane.
Same.
But this was a shock for me this morning, going down to Asda. Should I have said that? There are lots of other really good supermarkets on the market too. I went to a supermarket and bought my newspaper, and it was a bit, oh my word, I couldn't.
It's all right, Mike. You're allowed to support your local Asda, by the way. Any support in any shop nowadays is a good thing. Anybody on the high street. What about you, Martin? Do you get a paper regularly?
I mean, I tend to early in the morning be checking on my phone various websites for my news. A couple of newspapers I subscribe to on the internet and read their version. Similar, I might buy a paper if I'm going on holiday, read it on a plane or traveling. I found it quite interesting, actually, feeling the weight of a newspaper and going through it and having to be more attentive to what you're reading somewhat, because you're thinking, I've got to summarize this quite quickly, but making the time to read it properly was a different experience today. Quite interesting to do.
Oh, good.
Again, after so long of once upon a time, always buying a newspaper.
I think the thing about papers is they can drill into the detail a lot more, and there's a lot more depth for stories. The trouble with the internet and the national broadcasters is a very narrow field. The thing about the papers is it's so broad, and also it covers just right across the different spectrums, politically as well. I always like to buy the Mirror and a left-leaning paper. And a broadsheet as well. Anyway, let's move on. Really, let's go over to you, Mike. Obviously, you wear lots and lots of hats, but the Golden Valley development, how is that progressing now? What's your role in it? And is it going forward? Are we going to see spades in the ground soon?
Well, yeah, it's progressing. I mean, we're talking about, as you in your intro, you said a £1 billion project, and of course, it's not going to happen overnight. That we are still estimating the whole thing is going to take between 10 and 15 years to complete. But it's a big project with lots and lots of parts to it. I mean, it's ambitious. We want to create over 11,000 new jobs. These are new jobs, not displaced jobs where people move to the site, bring in employees with them, but brand new jobs, mainly in the cyber industry, but not all, of course, because there's got to be support industries there too as well. And I was once told that in the RAF, the only people who fly planes are pilots, but there's 1,001 other professions that need to be there to make things happen. So it's similar here as well. And the other big element is over 3,000 new homes, 35% of which will be affordable. Now, I know affordable, that splits the room usually when people say what's affordable, but we've purchased 46 hectares of land ourselves. It's as a medium-sized district council, that's quite an ambition. We've been working with lots of partners, and I've always been told you shouldn't list things out because you're going to forget somebody really important. But you think of the main players, and they're all in there. As I say, 35% affordable because we want to aim this at our young people. There was a recent project done at the University of Gloucestershire that estimated a huge percentage of our young people leave the area when they graduate or when they're born and brought up in the area. They can't afford to find somewhere to live, so they leave, which is really sad. So we want those young people to stay here and help with our economy. Another big sort of tagline is it's going to be carbon neutral. So it's going to be a green development, a green garden development, lots of public open space, lots of biodiversity. And on the planning side of things, the innovation centre is the centrepiece. That's where it's all going to be happening from. And we are aiming to put our planning application in by late summer of this year. So depending on how that goes, we should see some construction starting 2024, hopefully.
Now, Mike, if I'm a business person sitting here all over the county, how do I get involved? How can my business get involved with this? Let's be honest. How does it trickle down to the rest of us?
Well, we've got a very active website there, the Golden Valley Development website. You can get involved there. We've got our partner, our main partner, our development partner is HPD and Factory. So they're going to be building both the houses and the business side of things as well. So I mean, it starts from the construction phase, really, where we want companies to take on apprentices, because we think that apprenticeships, not everyone needs to go to university. We've already mentioned university earlier on, but not everyone needs to go to university. We still need our manual labourers, our construction people, our plumbers, our electricians, our carpenters. We need those people that can, be available to go out and do that as well. And we think it's an opportunity for some of those young people to actually get jobs and want to settle in the area. And I'm, as you can tell, I'm extremely excited about the whole thing.
As I am too, Mike. No, thanks ever so much for giving a good old brief for that. And that leads me very nicely over to actually the director of people, or people director as he's known in Creed Catering. Martin, let's be honest, it's all about the people. You're the people person leading Creed. Can you tell us about what Creed does to keep its staff there and motivate them? And
Yeah. I mean, I think our culture is the key part of our business. I mean, in the leading, you were saying about what's happening in our industry, and it's still a very challenging market with food inflation and lots of competition, and right through to our end customers facing real challenges still in getting staffing and all of that piece. There's still an overhang of that. And thankfully, we're in a really good place, being really successful coming out of COVID and continue to be. And we've learned it is all about our culture, it's all about our people, and working really hard at that, because the difference now is consistency and service and relationships, and the people and the culture becomes ever more important in that time. So we use the best companies to work for measure. So we do surveys. We now do those twice a year. We just found out that we're again a 2-star company. Last year we again appeared on the best companies to work for list. There's a whole load of activity it takes around under that, in training, development, visibility, in levels of empowerment, training. We've done a lot around apprenticeships. We utilize the Kickstart program a lot. We've done a lot on trying to bring in and develop younger people. there's there's a challenge around that still overhangs, I think, and became even larger during lockdown around people's well-being. We've got 14 members of our team who volunteered and are well-being champions who are working on our diversity program, and they're working on supporting our physical and mental well-being. So that's been a real positive thing. They're taking the lead now within the business and taking ownership for some of that. So lots of people activity, which I'm incredibly proud of, but it really is critical, I think, to a business to get the culture right and get people involved and empowered and engaged, ever more so.
What I've got you now is, obviously you talk about food inflation. It must have a massive effect. We're seeing, we ran a story the other day about a grocer, peppers going up, 300%, tomatoes going up 150%. How does a company like yours that deals in the hospitality trade, the, catering as a whole, cope with those ever increasing prices?
Well, I think it's a combination, isn't it, of you try and absorb what you can, you make sure that you've, again, good relationship with suppliers, making sure you're getting product in, making sure you're proactive in those relationships and in your supply chain and in your processes, so you're on the front foot and accessing things in the first place. But also, some costs you try and withhold where you can, but some inevitably you take your part in passing that on. And every part of our supply chain, from effect on cost of fertilizers in the field through to all the production and manufacturing, through to, as I've just highlighted, our end users who are struggling as well. It's a difficult challenge for everybody throughout that supply chain still.
No, thanks ever so much for that, Martin. A really great insight. And Creed obviously is a great company. I'd just like to say also a big thank you for supporting the No Child Left Behind and helping us sponsor that as well last year. It's a great
event, Mark. We've been part of that for a couple of years. It is a great event. It really is.
I'm going to tie you down. You're going to do it again this year, please.
I suspect we probably will.
Okay. Thanks very much. Sorry, Julie. Always great to see you. Please tell us about Emily's gift.
Well, Emily's gift is obviously named after my daughter. We lost our daughter when she was 3. She had a brain tumour, and that was 27 years ago. So she would have been 30 last year. And I wanted to do something big. The Children's Cancer Unit at Gloucester Royal is called the Emily Kent Unit, because when she died, we had a charity then, and we donated to Pied Piper when the new children's centre was just about to be opened. So I'm the vice chairman of Pied Piper now, and it's an appeal within the charity. And I'm going to raise £500,000 in 1 year. That's good. They kept straight faces then, because most people just laugh at me. We're going to raise £500,000 for a psychologist. There are 7 children's cancer units in the Southwest, and we are the only one that doesn't have a psychologist. So as the consultants and the nurses, the play specialists, they say we can give them all the medical help, the chemo, everything. But, as an 8-year-old, they need someone to talk to about what is going to happen to them and what it means. And for the parents who are saying, we don't know how to talk to our children, we don't know the language to use, we need someone to help us, absorb what is going on. Because the consultant, and I remember ours extremely well, they give you the diagnosis, they tell you what's going to happen, and they walk out the room. And there is no one to sit down and say to you, your child's going to bloat from the steroids and your child's going to lose their hair. And so it's at Bristol, there is a psychologist. And when our kids go to Bristol for the tricky chemo, they might be able to see them. But she's dealing with over 60 kids, and she's only funded every year. So every year they don't know she's going to be there. So I said, right, I'll fund it for 10 years. It is my swan song in fundraising. I've been fundraising for 27 years and I don't want to do it anymore. I'd like people to see me coming down the street and think, oh, blimey, she wants money again. So this is my swan song, £500,000 1 year. And we launched 3 weeks ago, and we actually launched having had 140,000 pledge. I'm looking for 250 businesses to give us £2,000. Then I'm done. And you can give it to me over 4 years, so it can be 500 a year for 4 years. One guy, a local guy, he gave me £500 the day I gave a talk at his Rotary, and he's going to give me 9 lots of 150. Fine, it comes to 2,000. At least we'll get it. So I did tell you we were going to announce on social media today where we are 3 weeks in. And I promised you the scoop, Mark, didn't I?
You did promise me, yes.
We are on 174,500 pledged, or some of it is in. People are climbing mountains. They are throwing themselves out of aeroplanes, but also, you know, especially financial advisors. They've got lots of money, haven't they? Looking for any financial advisors that could just write me a check for 2,000. That would be great.
I don't think anybody ever says that about you, Julie, when you walk down the street in front of them, by the way. No chance. They think, is she going to get a saxophone out?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, which I did this week, actually, at the brew. We had a hat party and I did get it.
I have, and I think you're just so fantastic, Julie. So fantastic, so inspiring. Anyway, thanks ever so much so far to the panel. We're coming on to the next phase, really. What have you chosen for this week's punchline? Mike, what have you picked out, please? You need to put your mic on, Mike.
Right. Yeah. Well, I had a look at last week's punchline. You had an article about the new housing development that's going to be part of the wider Elms Park development in the northwest of Cheltenham there, so very close to junction 10 of the M5. And I'll mention that. I'll come back to that in a minute. But this first phase was for 266 houses on what's going to be called Swindon Farm. Well, you talked about a plan application going in, but it went in and it got permission to go ahead. So Persimmon, who were the applicants, they are going to be able to start building those houses. And very importantly, 93 of those 266 houses are going to be affordable. What I find is that people object, oh, we don't need these. Why are they building all these houses? We don't need them. Well, just about everyone who says that, they already live in a house that meets their needs. Cheltenham's got, at the moment, just over 2,800 people on our housing register. And they're not all homeless, obviously, but many of them, in fact, all of them, don't live in any accommodation that currently meets their requirements. And some of those requirements can be really complex. So, you know, I'm very much in the area of saying we do need to build more houses. We've got a much bigger population than we used to have. Central government dictates how many we should build in Gloucestershire. We've been told we've got to build tens of thousands of houses, and this is all part of a scheme called the Joint Core Strategy, where with Gloucester City Council and Shropshire Borough Council, Cheltenham works to deliver. We're going to have to deliver over 30,000 houses in the next 10 years or so. So it's very important that we do this and we do it right. The big thing for me on that development is it's not even going to be connected to the gas network. It's going to be a carbon neutral development, which is fantastic. It really is, because human nature is to be scared and opposed to change, but we have to bite the bullet here and say, no, we're going to have to do something pretty major, and we have. So the whole development at Elms Park is going to be over 4,000 houses. It is going to include facilities like a new secondary school, new primary schools, medical and community facilities, as well as retail. So it's, you know, I know there's a lot of pressure on our services at the moment, but these developers, they've got to, yes, put their hand in their pockets and say, we will make contributions towards these very important facilities that need to make a community a community.
Okay, thanks ever so much for that, Mike. Martin, what have you picked out, please?
I picked out the TIC being awarded £57,000 grant to improve mental health for boys in Gloucestershire. I thought it was interesting. So TIC is Teens in Crisis charity. And they were talking about 70% of young people who access services to help with mental challenges and self-harming. And it's 70% of female and only 30% male. So there's still that piece, I think, particularly perhaps in young boys who are struggling to talk about where they are. And I think, you know, if you think how that then flows through, you know, we know that the biggest killer in the Western world of men is suicide. You know, 3 times more likely. Death by suicide is it's a huge thing for people who are biggest killer under 45. So, you know, if we, I guess, create an environment where men are more comfortable to talk at an earlier age, perhaps we're going to stem the flow through to an older age. So I think it's a really, really important piece of work that they're doing to focus on that and bring, you know, a general focus for both young men and young women across that piece. So I thought it was a really positive and interesting thing to read.
Okay, thanks ever so much for that, Martin. Julie, what's caught your eye in this week's punchline, please?
Oh, pardon?
As we wrap up the show.
Yes, okay, I'll be quick. It's the Lloyds Bank leaving Wootton Under Edge, only because I am a Lloyds Bank banker. And I'm frustrated that it's gone from Bath Road in Cheltenham. You know, the bank I used to use all the time is now the Ivy. Lloyd's banks are going from everywhere. And the sad thing is there won't even be a cash point that they can actually get to. It's going to be embedded inside the co-op. So if you do need, I suppose, who does need cash at midnight? But I just think I did actually the other day go to the post office because I had some cash. I'd sold something. I'd had some cash. I was thinking, how can I pay it into my account? I had to go to the post office at Brockworth and pay it in, which was okay. But I just think it's another thing that, especially for old people, how are they going to cope with that? I know there's 7,000 residents apparently in Wootton Under Edge, but for old people, it's just too much. They have a routine and they need to go to the person who talks to them every day when they put their money in or take it out. Just another, it's very sad, I think.
I totally agree, Julie, but it's not just about that. It's, if you're a business and you still deal with cash, a lot of people still deal with cash, where do you actually play? There's some security issues here. Can't have many people, running around with thousands of pounds driving up and down the roads all over the place. Thanks ever so much for that. My story of the week, obviously there was the cuts to the BBC that continue, and but my story has to be the 50th anniversary of Rennie Shaw. Congratulations to them, an amazing business, employ thousands of people, and what they've done exporting for the UK and during the pandemic as well. Got to take your hats off to them. A very successful business. I'd like to thank our fantastic panel. Thank you ever so much, guys, for joining us today. Punchline Talks. I'd like to thank our amazing sponsors, Hazelwood's Business Accountants and Advisors. And finally, I'd like to thank you all for watching. If you like the show, please like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you again very soon. If you like the Punchline, I think I said that. Like, share, subscribe. Bye.